This jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
You may proceed. Excuse me. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
State your full name, please.
My name is Jody Blakely Webb.
Can you spell your last name, please? Or actually, why don't you spell your first name as well?
Jodiwebb.
And do you work, ma'am?
I'm sorry?
Do you work?
Yes, I do.
And where do you work?
I am a geologist forensic examiner with the Federal Bureau of Investigation Laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay. How long have you been with the FBI?
Over 17 years.
And prior to joining the FBI, did you go to school?
Yes.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I received a Bachelor of Science degree, and also the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I received a Master's of Science degree, both in geology.
And after finishing at University of North Carolina, where did you go from there?
From there, I entered on duty with the FBI laboratory.
And when you entered on duty, was there some formal training program?
Yes.
And just if you would briefly describe that, how long was that for, and what areas did that cover?
The training program was approximately a year-long on-the-job training program, which was working under the direct supervision of qualified forensic geologists, both conducting examinations and learning how to prepare reports. And at the end of that, we also had some testing for competency.
Okay. Were you able to pass all the competency requirements?
Yes, I did.
And so just if you would tell us now, for these number of years that you've been with the FBI, how have you been assigned?
For the majority of that time, I have been assigned in my current position as a geologist forensic examiner.
And what type of work do you do as a geologist, a forensic examiner?
I'm responsible for the forensic examination of geologic materials, which would include soil, rocks, minerals, and gemstones. And those things, man-made from those materials, which includes glass and other building materials, for example, concrete, bricks, blocks, even insulation materials, and wallboard.
And just in terms of your analysis, tell us about how you go about making examinations of these types of materials.
The examination is a process where I look at and try to characterize the properties of color, texture, and composition. To do this, I begin fairly simply with a visual examination, usually in a controlled lighting environment, and then move along to using other techniques, including several types of microscopes and then other instruments as needed.
With regard to soil, do you do much work examining or testing soil?
Yes, I would say soil examinations are about half of my current caseload.
And are there differences between soils from area to area?
Yes, soil varies horizontally across the earth, as of course you know, but also vertically with depth. So these changes can be gradual, for example, on a beach, or they can occur much more abruptly, and perhaps in a mountain area that is an older environment.
And have you ever had occasion to examine soil recovered from the underside or wheel well of a vehicle?
Yes.
How frequently are you involved in that type of examination?
Soil from a vehicle is one of our more normal types of comparisons that I receive.
So I'd like to direct your attention back to the summer of 2013. Do you recall becoming involved in the investigation of a homicide in North Attleboro, Massachusetts?
Yes, I do.
And as a result of being involved in that, did you have certain conversations or phone, at least initially, phone contacts with somebody from the Massachusetts Crime Lab?
Yes, I did.
And do you recall who that was?
Yes, that was Sherry Hernandez.
Okay. And as a result of those phone contacts, at some point were certain items then sent to you?
Yes, they were.
And can you just describe what was sent to you and how it was sent to you in terms of its packaging?
I received 2 items sent to me. One was described to me as debris from the passenger side wheel well of the vehicle, and the other was described to me as a soil sample from the area of 344 John Deesh Boulevard in Adamsboro.
Okay. And just if you would, describe how that was packaged when it was sent to you.
These samples were received in separate small containers that were well sealed, and within each of those containers were also within their own levels of packaging of brown paper bags that were also received to me in a sealed condition.
May I approach, Your Honor? Ma'am, I'm just going to show you two photographs, ask you if you recognize this first one.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what about the second one?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what do you recognize these to be?
These were the soil and debris samples sent to me from the Massachusetts State Crime Lab.
And just for the purpose of the record, they're marked, the first one I showed you, Exhibit 145 and 146. How do you recognize these?
I recognize these. They have my laboratory's nomenclature and my initials on both pictures.
Use the overhead. Yes. Ma'am, I'm placing 145 on the overhead. That's the first photograph I showed you.
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize your handwriting there?
Yes, my handwriting is in the blue ink over toward the side.
Is that showing it its right side up?
Correct.
And then just placing 146 on the overhead, you recognize that as well?
Yes, similarly, my writing is on the right side in the blue ink.
Now, as a result of receiving these items, actually, if I could just show you back to 145. Do you recall which one was the question sample, the one you just referred to from the wheel well, and then the known sample?
Yes, Exhibit 145 received my designation of Q1, which is an unknown sample sample from an unknown location.
And is Q with a number typically referred to a question sample?
Yes, it does.
And with regard now to, this is now 146, you recognize there's some numbers there as well?
Yes.
And does that indicate what sample this is?
Yes, the designation K1 in my laboratory refers to a sample from a known location.
And those numbers, are those assigned to this case for the FBI's purpose?
Yes, this is the FBI laboratory's unique labeling of each case received into our laboratory.
And Your Honor, if I could approach, please. Ma'am, I'm just going to show you first this item. Ask if you recognize it.
Yes, I do. That is my Q1.
Okay, was that, is this the same item that I just showed you in the photograph, which was previously marked as an exhibit?
Yes, sir, it is.
And then the second item, well, just tell us, if you would, what did you do once you received this, this item, this tin, little tin?
When I received the item into the laboratory, I take notes on its condition upon arrival, and then I opened that package and placed it into a small plastic container so that I could do further examination on it.
Okay, and I'm just going to show you this plastic container. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize this to be?
This also has my laboratory's unique identifying information and my initials on it.
Okay. Do these two things go together in terms of, you indicate this was the question sample. Is this a question or a known sample?
This is both the question. This is actually just the packaging, and the sample itself is now in my plastic container.
Okay. And is it in substantially the same condition after you had reduced it into this, or conducted your analysis and then returned this item?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd offer these as the next two exhibits, please.
That's the packaging and the soil sample?
Yes, sir.
No objection.
Can you mark as the next exhibit?
Yes, please, if we could do this separately. Thank you. That's fine.
400 and 401.
Thank you. If I could use the overhead, Your Honor. And this is now mark number 400. You recognize that as the tin that was shown in the photograph, is that right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Now, the contents of this, of 400, were then emptied?
Yes.
And just tell us what you did once you emptied it.
I simply repackaged the item into the small plastic container so that I could work with it further.
And I'm just going to show you now what's been marked. 401. And is that plastic container that now that you have transferred the contents into and marked with your lab number and also as kilo?
Yes, sir, it is.
And KO at the end of that string up top, does that have any particular meaning to you?
That's a old bureau designation. Those are actually my initials on cases where we may or may not have actually given our name. Each examiner used to receive their own designated symbols.
May I approach, Your Honor? And I'm just going to show you this other metal tin. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that?
That is the container that I received that held the known sample, my K1.
Okay. And then I'm showing you this plastic container. Do you recognize it?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize this as?
This is the container that I transferred the material into, and then this also received the same designation. It's K1.
And again, that being a known.
Yes.
And these two in substantially the same condition as when you last saw them.
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I'd offer these as the next two exhibits, please.
No objection.
Can you mark as the next exhibit?
Two and 403.
Thank you. May I use the overhead again, Your Honor? And I'm just showing you the tin mark 402. You indicated this is the tin of the known, what was designated K1 when it was sent to you by the Massachusetts Crime Lab, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
403, the overhead in that, you indicated what the soil that you took from that last exhibit, 402, and placed into this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Mark, can you tell us After having received these items, what did you do to attempt to evaluate or compare these different samples?
So I started my characterization of their color, texture, and composition. And in this case, I conducted a visual examination in a restricted lighting conditions, and then looked at them with a stereobinocular microscope, which is simply a microscope that will magnify an image in a three-dimensional way.
Now, when you did that, were you able to make certain observations of K1 compared to Q1?
Yes, at that time I noticed that there were differences both in their color, their texture, and their composition. So I concluded my exam at that point.
How were you able to do that?
I was able to eliminate the debris recovered from the passenger wheel well as originating from 344 Dish Boulevard as represented by my K1 soil exemplar.
Now, with regard to the Q1, can you just describe the material based on the observations you made when you examined it?
Yes, may I refer to my notes? Your Honor? This material was received, there was a relatively small amount of material, less than about 5% of my container, as you see, was full of that material. And it was very small in size and also fairly evenly distributed in its sorting, meaning, excuse me, that all the grains were approximately the same size and the approximate same distribution of shape. Sorry. I might, yes.
And with regard to the approximate distribution of size and shape, was there consistency in terms of the color of these, of the material in Q1?
This sample was fairly consistent, although there were some fragments that were darker than others or lighter. But overall, it had a fairly consistent color.
Okay. And the fragments that were darker than other, are you familiar with mica?
I am.
Can you just tell us what is mica?
It's a mineral that is fairly common in the environment, and it's made in sheets. You might have seen it in some materials such as potting soil, where you'd see gold material that can be flaked off. That's a certain type of mica, which represents a wide range of material, actually.
And were you able to see some consistency in the mica in the sample of Q1?
Well, yes, first I noticed that there was some present and that it was relatively consistent throughout.
Okay. Now, with regard to K1, which again just is 403, your comparison just in terms of the size and shape, was that different?
Yes.
Okay, and how was it different?
My K1 soil exemplar was very poorly sorted, and that means that it had some very small grains up to grains that were little pebble sized, like a gravel that you might be familiar with. And these grains were all very different shapes and sizes. Some were very rounded and some were very angular. So I would determine that that was a poorly sorted material.
In the sizing of those materials compared to, so K1 compared to Q2, was it bigger, smaller, or the same?
It was very different. So I would describe my Q1 as moderately well sorted and my K1 as very poorly sorted. And those are textural terms, but they indicate that they were different.
And did you find any, in K1, did you find a similar distribution of mica?
I did not identify mica in the K1 sample.
So as a result of your observation based on the color and the texture and composition, were you able to then exclude Q1 as having been derived from K1?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Can I use the overhead again there, please? Now, ma'am, I'm placing 4 drawing back on the overhead. And is that representative of the material that you examined?
Yes.
Now, you had mentioned the mica. Can you see some of the mica in that material?
I believe that those are the brighter white particles, but I would have to confirm that.
Okay. If I could approach the witness chair, please. So I'm just showing you this item and seeing if you can see some of any of the mica present there.
Yes, I can see it.
These little flakes here, what are these?
Yes, I believe those are the mica flakes in this.
They tend to shine under the light.
Yes.
And if you describing this material, the fairly fine sand.
Yes, it is. And those terms actually refer to a specific size range.
I see. Okay. And now I'm showing you what was marked 403. Does that accurately reflect the type of material in K1?
Yes.
Obviously, in terms of color and size, is that different?
Yes, you can see that there are different sizes represented, much smaller. It might be harder to see the smaller fraction, but you can see that there are a lot of samples that get much larger.
And were you able to note any similar flaking of the mica as you had in Q1?
Did not note any of that component in my K1.
If I could have one moment, Your Honor, please. I have no further questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, Ms. Webb.
Good morning, sir.
Am I correct that you have a Bachelor of Science degree
Yes.
and you have a Master's of Science degree?
Yes, sir.
And you told us that you've had extensive training in your field as a forensic examiner.
Yes.
And part of that training was that you've spent a considerable amount of time working under the supervision of a more experienced forensic examiner when you got started. Is that right?
Yes, for about the first year.
Okay.
And then from that time on, I was qualified by our FBI laboratory to conduct them on my own.
And you've now been working at the FBI laboratory for, you said, more than 18 years, right?
Well, since 1997, November.
Okay, so it'll be 18 years this November?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you've worked on cases from all over the country?
Yes, I have.
And have you co-authored a number of scientific articles that have been published in forensic scientific journals?
Yes, a couple, and presentations as well.
You've also made presentations at conferences for other forensic scientists. Is that
Yes,
fair
I
to say?
have.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me, Ms. Webb, that as a forensic scientist, it's important that you are objective?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree with me that as a forensic scientist, it's important for you to avoid exposure to extraneous information about the case?
To some extent, although when I conduct a soil examination, Usually I can't conduct it entirely in a vacuum because I need to know something about where my soil exemplars originated from, because a part of my examination, which I didn't do in this case, but if needs be, would be to compare those samples and their locations on Earth with existing mapping programs. So I do need some sort of information so that I can work within the correct context.
Sure. So you may need certain information about where those soil samples came from.
Correct.
Okay. But other than that, am I correct that it's important in order for you to maintain your objectivity to avoid exposure to extraneous information about the case that does not relate to what's in front of you?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And would you agree with me it's important for you to avoid bias when you conduct forensic examination?
Yes.
And would you agree with me that it's important for you to avoid being pressured by investigators when you conduct your forensic examination?
Of course.
Okay. And why is that important?
Well, the evidence tends to speak for itself. So there, sometimes our findings might be inculpatory, they might be exculpatory, they might not have much significance at all. And the findings are the findings. So I would report on those just as the evidence itself.
So your results are your results, right?
Correct.
Whether it helps the prosecution or hurts the prosecution does not affect your work, right?
That's correct.
Because you're a forensic scientist, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you're objective.
I hope so.
And that's what you're trained to do in the FBI crime laboratory, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's the right way to conduct forensic analysis, correct?
I would say that that would be correct.
Okay. Now, in this case, you examined two separate soil samples, right?
Yes, sir.
And one of them was known, which was the sample from 344 John Deitch Boulevard, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the other one you called unknown, or so that one was labeled K, right? K1, the known one?
Correct.
Okay. And then the Q1, the unknown one, that was that came from the wheel well of a Nissan Altima, right?
That's what was reported to me, yes.
Okay. And you compared those two soil samples?
Yes, I did.
Okay. As a forensic scientist?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you concluded that K1, that is the soil sample from John Deitch Boulevard, was excluded as being a source of the soil from the wheel well of the Nissan Altima, right?
Yeah, let me just say that in
Say it your way, please.
the right way. It is that the area of 344 John Deitch Boulevard, as represented by the sample that I received, was eliminated as a possible source of the debris from the wheel well.
Sure. All you could do is test what's given to you, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that's all you did?
That's correct.
Okay. And you concluded, I think, as you told us on direct examination, that the two samples were, in your words, very different, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you wrote a report setting forth your findings, right?
Correct.
And that's also what you're part of your protocol and what you're trained to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. And nobody ever tried to influence your findings, did they?
No.
No one ever came back to you and asked you to take another look at those samples, did they?
No, sir.
Okay. And that would have been wrong. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I guess so.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Okay.
It wouldn't be unusual if someone came back to you with another sample and said, look at this, compare that, is that?
Yes, that's correct. It is, it's not unusual for us to receive additional exemplars at some time, or even, that would be the known samples from certain areas, if other areas are developed as a possible location, or even other material that we would call the question materials, again, if other samples have been developed between the time that I originally received them and the time that I reported on my examination.
And just with regard to the I think you indicated sometimes you'll look at mapping to try and determine certain soils in a particular area,
Yes.
and that wasn't undertaken in this case.
No, sir, it was not.
And did you have some understanding about the nature of where the known was coming from?
Yeah, it was my understanding that this was an undeveloped part of an industrial complex.
Okay. And so obviously that has some significance to you. If it's undisturbed soil, then your mapping of areas would be important. If it's an area that's used to store and has been, moved around material, would that have less significance to you?
Possibly. The reason I didn't map in this case is because they were different. But also, yes, the more that again, soil is going to change based on those properties that we talked about before, and one of those is the influence of man. And if there is a lot of earthworks going around, I would had to have been able to capture the way that park looked at the moment that the known soil sample was received or was actually taken, and did not have the ability to do that.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Just very briefly, you indicated on redirect examination that there are times that you'd be given additional samples to test.
Yes, sir.
And of course, if you were asked to test those additional samples, you would, right?
Yes, sir, I would.
But the testing on the additional samples, that wouldn't change the results you got and reported originally, would it?
Oh, no, those would be reported in a supplemental report. That those would also stand on their own.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you.
Hernandez, Heliopoulos.
Right this way, sir. If you could please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Sir, you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give to this court in this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I inquire?
You may.
Morning, sir. State
Morning.
your name for the record, please.
Antonius Iliopoulos,
Can you spell both your first name and your last name, please?
Antoniopoulos.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I work as a forensic video analyst for the Boston Police Department.
How long have you done that job?
A little over 19 years now.
What does it entail?
Well, the definition of a forensic video analyst is one that examines, scientifically compares and/or evaluates video in legal matters. What I do daily, my daily tasks, involve helping and assisting investigators with multimedia evidence that they may need assistance with.
Specifically in the city of Boston, is there a camera system that you work with?
There are a few different camera systems in the city of Boston that I work with, yes.
What is the sort of the largest with the most numerous cameras?
I would say the DVTEL system would be one of them, and I also work with transportation department cameras and quick deploy system cameras, is what we call them.
Specifically with reference to the DVTEL cameras, what are those?
They are surveillance cameras that are scattered throughout the city of Boston, capturing surveillance videos in different intersections of the streets of Boston, and there's an archival system and a live system so that things are archived for 30 days, so that if an investigator would like to go back to a particular day, they can request that through me, and I will go into that system and extract from there the the timeline and the dates and the correct time of the investigation, what they need for the time and date, basically.
Where is the sort of the recording part of the DVTEL system located?
It's upstairs in operations at headquarters, Boston Police Headquarters. That's where the server is, and it also keeps a track of the time there
And where
as well.
do you work in reference to that?
I work out of the Crime Scene Response Unit.
And how do you access what you just described as the servers?
I go into the computer and I download my credentials to the DVTEL system, and then I have the platform of the DVTEL system.
By credentials, what do you mean?
My password, my name and password.
Okay. And the cameras that you've described, they exist back in 2013 in June?
They did, yes.
Okay. And were they any different back then than what you just described?
No, they've just gotten better. You know, they've been implementing better cameras since then.
Prior to June of 2013, on how many occasions had you been required to pull video off of the DVTEL system for investigations?
I would say if not 1,000 times, hundreds of times, probably over 1,000 times.
Who generates those requests for you?
Investigators throughout the city of Boston. There could be any department, it could be sexual harassment department or the homicide department.
How do the requests come to you?
Through email usually, yes.
And when you receive the email from an investigator, what do you do?
I look at it, I read it, and I download the parameters, the dates and times that are necessary for the investigation.
How do you know when you're looking at the system that you have the right time?
Well, the system, there's a timestamp on the video, and there's an atomic clock that system is tied to, tied back to, so that I know it's the correct time.
With reference to this particular case, did you get a request on June 18th from Sergeant Stratton to get some video for him?
Yes, I believe it was June 19th.
Okay, on that day, sir, what did you do?
On the 20th, the morning of the 20th when I came into work, I filled that request. There was a request for a couple of intersections, Blue Hill Ave and Quincy and Blue Hill Ave and Dudley. I filled that request and I left it at the Crime Scene Response Unit, which is a designated area for the investigators to pick up.
When you fill the request, do you actually look at any video?
I look at it to make sure that what I downloaded is actually there, make sure that the beginning and the end, the whole timeline is there, and then I put it away. I do not view the video.
At that particular time, what do you do with reference to checking the time of the video to see if it's accurate?
I check it to the time of the atomic clock, which I go by, and I just reference the atomic clock. I call up to 911, I ask them the time, they tell me the time, I compare the time to the video, and if it checks out, everything's fine.
What were the times of Sergeant Stratton's request, do you recall?
They were about 2:30 in the morning.
On which day, sir?
June 19th, June, I'm sorry.
You seem to be pausing. Is your memory exhausted with regards to the date that he requested?
A little bit, yes.
May I approach, Ron?
Me.
Show you this object, sir, and ask if that refreshes your recollection as to the date at 2:30 in the morning that Sergeant Stratton requested.
Yes.
What was the date he requested?
June 17th, 2013.
Now, if I could, sir, I'd just show you these two discs and ask if you recognize what those are.
Yes, these are the discs of Blue Hill Ave and Dudley Street and Blue Hill Ave and Quincy Street.
Do you know what they contain?
I do know what they contain. I downloaded this footage.
And how do you know that that's the same footage that you downloaded?
I viewed this CD, and it has my initials on it here, knowing that I viewed it.
Is that true for both CDs?
Yes, sir, for both.
And move to admit these, Your Honor.
I'd object, Your Honor, the witness said he did not view the video when he downloaded it. He viewed it afterwards, so he had nothing to compare it to.
I thought he said he did download it as a video, as he viewed it as he downloaded, but I'll ask him again. Sir, when you actually downloaded this, did you check to see the video itself as you were downloading it?
Yes, every time I download a video, to make sure that the time is correct, I view the video and I downloaded that video, yes, and it was correct. At the time, I mean, I've done thousands of cases like this, and I've done it just the same way as any
Objection.
other.
That is non-responsive, Your Honor.
That portion is struck
With
as
that additional
non-responsive.
foundation, no objection.
Without objection, they may be marked as the next exhibit.
Thank you.
and 405.
Now, with regards to 404 and 405, sir, what did you do with them after, what did you do with the downloaded video after it was completed?
All the video goes into the evidence room, which there's always a copy left there, and then I made a copy for the detective, and I left it in a designated area of the crime scene response unit, and so that the investigator can come and pick them up when
What do
they
you mean a
have chance.
designated area? Who designated it?
The crime scene response unit.
And is that
So
the normal course of how you do this in terms of passing it on to the investigator?
Yes, it's a secured area of the crime scene response unit, so that any investigators needing various items from myself or other people in the crime scene response unit will leave things there, and they'll be picked up by the investigator.
No further questions?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
So you work for the Boston Police Department,
Yes, sir.
and the cameras that you're describing, they're maintained by the Boston Police Department?
We also have an outsource some of that work.
And
from
these
the-
cameras are used for police purposes, is that right?
For all types of purposes and police purposes, yes, sir.
Well, you use them for police purposes, isn't that right?
Yes, yes.
Now, sir, you mentioned that you were asked by Detective Stratton to obtain some video, is that right?
Correct.
Did Detective Stratton ask you to obtain video of the Baston Street area and Blue Hill from Friday, June 14th? Friday night, June 14th?
I don't remember that, no.
Did Detective Stratton ask you to obtain video from this same area, Blue Hill Avenue and Baston Street, in the early morning hours of Saturday, June 15th?
I don't recall.
Did Detective Stratton ask you to obtain video of this same area on the early morning hours of June 17th between 1:13 a.m. and 2:13 a.m.?
June 17th, I remember it was, I don't remember it being 1:15, but I do remember it around 2:30, around that time, yes. I can't remember the particulars of the in point and the out point, but I do remember it was about 2:30 in the morning.
Right. My question was,
Yes.
were you asked to obtain video at approximately 1:13 in the morning on Baston and Blue Hill Avenue?
No, I don't believe so, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Nothing further. Nothing further. Thank
You
you.
may sit down.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sergeant Stratton, please.
If you could please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Sir, do you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give to this court and this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
May I inquire? Sir, state your name for the record, spelling your last name, please.
It's Michael Stratton, S-T-R-A-T-T-O-N.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a sergeant detective with the Boston Police Department,
How long have you been a police officer?
27 years.
When did you first become a detective?
I was promoted to sergeant in 1997, and rated a sergeant detective in 2004.
What does that mean to be rated a sergeant detective?
You start performing an investigative function and supervising detectives.
Where were you assigned at that time?
I was the commander of the Boston Police School Unit for that 3 years, and I had 3 or 4 detectives assigned to me at that point. And then in 2007, I went back to District B2 in Roxbury, and I supervised about a dozen night detectives.
In general terms, could you describe sort of the area of B2 in Roxbury?
B2 covers Roxbury and some parts of Dorchester.
With reference to the center of the city, what side of the city is it on?
It's just outside of downtown Boston. It's abutted by Jamaica Plain, Mission Hill, Mattapan, and the expressway on the far side, Mass Ave.
Far side, east, west? Which side?
I would say the northern part is around Mass Ave and Melnia Cass Boulevard.
Okay. How long were you a detective in that part of the city?
Well, I went back there in 2007, but I was the commander of the school unit from 2004 to 2007, and my station was in Roxbury. So I've been in Roxbury in one capacity or another for my entire career.
Okay. And what types of crimes did you investigate at that point in your career?
We went to all crime scenes, violent crimes, robberies, burglaries, and we would be responsible for processing the crime scenes and conducting the follow-up investigations.
You referenced 2007. Did your job change that year?
It did. I became the night supervisor of detectives for the District B2 in Roxbury. So our sole function was to investigate all crimes within Roxbury.
What's the night time what's your shift as a night supervisor?
4 p.m. to 11:45 p.m.
And how long did you have that job?
Up until March of 2014, then I was transferred to the homicide unit.
Is that where you currently work?
Yes.
And what is your responsibilities there now?
I supervise 3 detectives in the squad, and we respond to and investigate homicides.
May I approach, Your Honor?
May.
Sir, I'll show you this large board and ask if you recognize what it is.
Yes, it's a map, and it shows parts of Roxbury. You've got Melnia Cass Boulevard, Warren Street, Blue Hill Ave's in the map, Dudley Street. That's like the center of Roxbury, District B2.
Does this fairly and accurately depict the relationship between all the streets in that area?
Yes, it does.
And is this the area, generally speaking, that you worked in for most of your career?
It is.
I'm going to move to admit this, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
May be marked as the next exhibit.
And a second. 406.
I think, Judge, could you come down just for a second to work with this? If you could, sir, just sort of generally orient us to the area. The orange line, what is that?
This is the expressway, Route 93 north and south.
Okay, and the green line crossing, what is that?
Up top, that's Route 90, the Mass Pike. And that travels east and west.
You referred to Melnia Cass Boulevard, where is that?
Melnia Cass Boulevard is highlighted in yellow.
Okay. The section from the orange, from the highway down to Melnia Cass, does that have a name?
The Mass Ave connector joins Melnia Cass to the expressway.
Where is Boston City Hospital, for where we're looking at?
It would be at the intersection of the Mass Ave connector and Mass Ave. You go one block to Albany Street, and Boston City Hospital is between Harrison Avenue and Albany Street at Mass Ave.
Okay. And so where is Faiston Street?
We'd have to come up Hamden Street off of Cass Boulevard up to Dudley Street. It would intersect with Blue Hill Avenue. You would come up several blocks, cross over Quincy Street, and Faiston Street would be the next street on the left-hand.
If you could just take the stand again, Sergeant, thank you. Now, with regards to your role in this particular case, did you receive a call during your shift on June 17th of 2013?
I did.
Okay. And in regards to that particular call, what did you do?
I responded with one of my teams of detectives to 10 Faiston Street to make a notification of a death.
Okay. And just so the jury understands, what is entailed in that? You say it as if it's a formal thing. Is it a formal thing?
It is. It wasn't.
Objection sustained.
What are the procedures that you normally use in a notification, sir?
When you respond to a scene, a death investigation, you want to notify the next of kin or the family as soon as possible once you've identified that victim.
Who was there at the notification?
Myself, Detective Timothy Stanton, and Detective Carlton Williamson, and Trooper Chad LaLiberty, and Trooper Zach Johnson.
Where did you go for the notification?
10 Faiston Street in Roxbury.
What is that neighborhood like?
It's a residential neighborhood. It's off of Blue Hill Avenue. Blue Hill Avenue is mixed commercial and residential. Faiston Street's all residential.
After you did the notification, what did you do in that neighborhood?
Well, we were still on scene on Faiston Street, so I walked around and looked at the neighboring houses to see if there were any video cameras, based on what we had learned once we arrived at the location.
Objection sustained.
So you looked for the video cameras.
Correct.
What did you find?
There was a house across the street, 9 Faiston Street, that had several cameras mounted on the home.
With regards to that, did you do anything?
I did. I went back to that residence the next day. I left a business card, and later on that afternoon, I got a phone call from the homeowner.
What time was it that you did the notification?
The notification for Odenoid, I think it was about 10:30 at night on Monday the 17th.
So on the 18th, when you went back, did you speak to somebody?
I did. I believe the homeowner's name was Jose Lopez.
And what did you do?
We met with him and asked him to view the video system.
Objection sustained. It's what did you do?
What did you actually do with him?
I looked at several different camera views on his video system.
Okay, and from that, did you learn something?
I did.
What was that?
At about 2:32 in the morning, a car pulled up to 10 Faiston Street. It was a silver Ford.
The objection is sustained, and then answer is ordered stricken.
If we might, Your Honor, I'll just play the video.
Disregard it. What's on the video is something that you, ladies and gentlemen, can look at the video yourselves.
Judge, if I could just play 179 for the detective, that's the one on the Faiston Street cameras.
Right.
So can you see that on your screen?
I can.
And do you recognize what that is?
Yes, it's the video from Faiston Street.
When you say the video, is this
It's-
video that
it's
you watched that night?
From the home of 9 Faiston Street.
And sir, with regards to this particular video that we're looking at here, what is its significance in terms of what you looked at that night?
Objection.
Objection is sustained.
Do you recognize this particular scene?
Objection.
With respect to seeing, the objection is sustained.
Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And with regards to this particular case, what was this?
Objection is sustained.
When did you first see this, sir?
I believe it was Tuesday, June 18th, at about 8:30 at night. We went to the home of Jose Lopez.
Objection, move to strike, not
Objection is
responsive.
sustained after the time.
Where did you first see this?
At 9 Faiston Street.
And who was with you?
Detective Timothy Stanton.
And was anybody else there?
The homeowner, Jose Lopez.
And were you able, with Jose Lopez, to determine whether or not the time was accurate on this video?
It was.
Okay. Based on that, sir, what did you do?
We viewed the video based on information we received.
Objection.
Objection sustained.
After you viewed the video, sir, what did you do?
We downloaded portions of the video from 3 different camera angles. Then I downloaded it to a thumb drive, and we took it to State Trooper Chad LaLiberty and turned it over to him.
Okay. Did you have any other further involvement in this particular case?
I did.
And what was that, sir?
I viewed a camera system operated by the Boston Police Department. It's called a DVTEL camera system. And I viewed cameras that I believed would capture this vehicle leaving Faiston Street.
How did you make that determination? Like, in other words, why did you pick particular cameras?
When I saw this vehicle on the video exit, Faiston Street's a one-way going out to Blue Hill Avenue. It went right to left out
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
How did you know which particular DVTEL cameras to look at?
The car went in that direction.
Objection, Your Honor, move to strike.
Overall.
When you say the car went in that direction, what direction was it?
It continued out to Blue Hill Avenue.
Were you familiar with that particular area of the city in terms of the DVTEL cameras?
Yes.
How were you familiar about that?
In the course of our investigations, we use those cameras all the time, and I'm familiar with several of the locations where they're situated.
What did you do at that point?
I viewed, the first DVTEL camera I viewed was at the intersection of Blue Hill Avenue and Quincy Street.
How did you view it?
On my computer back at the office, we can log on to the system, and we have access to view live video feed or plug in a date and time and watch recorded sections.
What was the first camera location that you looked at?
Quincy Street at Blue Hill Avenue, and the camera was facing up Blue towards Faiston Street.
What time did you look at?
I saw this vehicle at 2:32 a.m. on Faiston Street, so I went from that time on that camera, and it captures the vehicle coming out of Faiston Street and turning right
Objection,
on.
Your Honor.
Objection sustained, and as to what the witness claims he saw, you may take that into account only as not for the truth of it at all, but to the extent it is explaining what cameras he may have looked at, his state of mind as to which cameras he looked at.
I might approach, Your Honor.
Me?
May I approach her?
Me?
Sir, I showed you this particular photograph and asked if you recognize what was in that photograph.
Yes, it's a photograph of the DPTL camera located on Blue Hill Avenue at the intersection of Quincy Street.
Does that fairly and accurately represent where that camera was in 2013?
Yes.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
May be marked as the next exhibit.
Show you this other photograph and ask if you recognize what that is.
That's a photograph of the intersection of Quincy Street at Blue Hill Avenue, looking up Blue Hill Avenue towards Faiston Street.
Move to admit that as well, Your Honor.
No objection.
May be marked as the next exhibit.
And may I publish?
Me?
Showing you 407, sir. You could just point out where the camera is in this particular picture?
It's at the top of the pole holding the signs and the traffic signals. It's right to the right of the word Quincy on the top of the pole.
Is that here, sir?
Correct.
Okay. And with regards to the direction of this picture, which way are we looking up Quincy, up Blue Hill Ave?
You're looking down Blue Hill Avenue going towards Dudley Street.
Is Faiston Street in this picture at all?
It's to the rear of you.
Can you see Faiston Street, in other words?
You cannot, it would be at your back.
Show you 408. What are we looking at in this picture, sir?
It's a picture of the same intersection, except you're going outbound on Blue Hill Avenue towards Grove Hall, and you're facing Faiston Street right on your left.
Which direction did the camera point that you looked at when you got back to the station that day?
The same direction you're looking at right now.
Where is Faiston Street in this photograph?
It's beyond the Citgo gas station on the left-hand side of the road.
So Faiston Street's on this side over here, is that what you're just pointing?
Correct.
Was there another camera that you pulled with regards to this particular investigation?
Yes.
Where was that located?
That camera was located at Blue Hill Avenue at the intersection of Dudley Street.
And where is that in reference to Quincy Street?
It's several blocks going inbound on Blue Hill Avenue down towards downtown Boston.
So with reference to the map that we're looking at, is it towards the top or towards the bottom?
You'd be going towards the top.
May I approach?
You may.
Show you this photograph and ask you to recognize what that is.
It's a photograph of the intersection, Blue Hill Avenue coming in from the right, and you're looking straight down Dudley Street.
Did you see the camera that you referenced in that particular photograph?
I'm not sure where it is in this picture. I can't see it. From the perspective I looked, it looked like it was at the top of that traffic pole. but I'm not sure if that's it or not.
Does this fairly and accurately represent the way that intersection looked at that time in June of 2013?
It does.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Mark this next exhibit.
Show you this photograph, sir, ask you to recognize what that is.
That's a photograph of the same intersection, but it's closer to Dudley Street, and you're looking down Dudley Street, and Blue Hill Avenue would be off to your right-hand side.
Does that fairly and accurately depict what that intersection looked like in June of 2013?
It does.
Move to admit, Your Honor.
No objection.
Mark this next exhibit.
May I apologize?
May.
Showing you 410. With regards to, excuse me, Dudley Street, where is Dudley Street in this photograph?
You're looking down Dudley Street. That's in the direction of Columbia Road, and it continues back down towards Dudley MBTA station.
Okay. And with regards to the direction of Dudley, coming towards sort of the foreview, towards where you would be in the picture, sort of coming up the line of those cars, is that north or south?
I believe it would be in a northerly direction.
Showing you 409. Can you see Dudley Street in this particular picture?
Yes, it's straight ahead off to the left-hand side of the photo, and it continues down. And Blue Hill Avenue is coming in from the right-hand side of the photo.
May I have a witness step down?
Me.
Sir, can you show us where the camera was on Blue Hill?
It was right at the intersection of Blue Hill Avenue with Quincy Street.
Can you just put a circle at that location, please? And the one at Dudley Street, sir? Did you mark that as well with a circle? Now, what direction did those two cameras point?
The first camera at Blue Hill Avenue and Quincy faced outbound on Blue Hill Avenue going in a southerly direction, with Basement Street being the next street on the left. And the camera at Blue Hill Avenue and Dudley Street was facing down Dudley Street in a southerly direction.
You could just put an arrow for the more northerly one showing the direction it faced. And then at Dudley Street as well, sir? Thank you. If you could just resume the stand. When you saw the video on your computer, what did you do?
I took note of the camera number and the location, and then I sent an email to Tony Iliopoulos of the forensic video unit to have copies downloaded.
Is Tony's full name Antonius?
It is.
And how long was it before you were able to get something back from him?
I had it the next morning.
And where did you pick it up from?
The front desk of the crime scene response unit.
What did you do with it at that point?
I took it back to the office to verify we had the right date and times, and I then turned it over to Trooper Chris Dumont.
When you say that you verified it, how did you do that?
By plugging, I came on a disc, I put the disc in the computer, brought it up, and I viewed it.
May I approach you?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been marked 404 and 405, and ask if you recognize what those are.
The first disc is footage of the camera located at Blue Hill Ave and Quincy Street. The second disc is video of the camera from Blue Hill Ave and Dudley Street.
And how do you know that's what's on those discs?
I've initialed them after I viewed them.
Your Honor, may I have permission to play these?
Are they in evidence?
They're in evidence.
Yes, you may.
First 404, excuse me, first 405. Sir, which camera are we looking at here?
The intersection of Blue Hill Avenue at Quincy Street.
Okay, where is Faceted Street in this particular video?
Up on the next street up on the left beyond the Citgo gas station.
And the street that's sort of depicted on the right-hand side, what street is that?
That's Blue Hill Avenue going straight outbound.
If you could just put the video. Sir, does this fairly and accurately depict what you viewed at the station that next day when you were looking at the video?
It does.
And that car that just went by, what direction is it heading?
Objection.
Sustained.
The foreground, if you will, of Blue Hill Avenue, is that heading north or heading south?
South.
Let me ask that question better. As we go away from us, as we head sort of...
Objection, form the question, Your Honor.
I have a better way to ask it, Judge. The top of the screen, sir, is that south or north on Blue Hill?
If you follow the road going from the bottom of the screen to the top, you would be going south. If you follow it coming back towards the screen, you'd be going north.
Thank you. With regards to the black lines on the bottom of the screen, was that there at the time that you viewed it?
Yes, it was. I believe it was.
Were you able, from looking at that, to determine the make and model of that particular car?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. We're going to take a morning recess at this time. Please keep an open mind. Don't discuss the matter among yourselves or with anyone else.
Would all rise to the jury, please.